JJ the CPA here. Hope you're doing well. All right, self-employed, my wonderful self-employed friends and clients, YouTube family, subscribers, it's time to file for PPP forgiveness. That's right, CSR. Filing time for PPP forgiveness. We can finally go ahead and get her done. The biggest thing that I was wanting everybody to wait on was for what we finally got, which is the simplified application for forgiveness. Now, I still am telling employers to hold on in terms of waiting to file for forgiveness, and that's simply to ensure that they have a rock solid way of knowing that they elected wages out of the forgiveness period to be available for the employee retention tax credit. So know this, for the self-employed, the employee retention tax credit doesn't apply to you unless you have employees. So for those that are self-employed, filing a Schedule C, filing a Schedule F, you can go ahead and file for forgiveness. Now, know this, if you are wanting to reapply for PPP first draw, then you don't want to file for forgiveness. You want to go and reapply, because if you file for forgiveness and you receive it, you can't reapply for first draw. So I'll let you watch other YouTube videos on that. You can go to my video list and they're in chronological, and you'll see one that talks about first draw, second draw. So know this, okay? If you're going after PPP 2.0, if you already got PPP 2.0, which we'll call second round, second draw, okay, and you're not going to reapply for PPP 1, okay, then you can go ahead and file for forgiveness. Now, if you have employees, self-employed, okay, you're going to want to hang on for a minute too, because you want to make sure that you're able to elect wages out of the covered period to be used for the employee retention tax credit. So let me just go back to the beginning, because you're like, wait a second, you just told us that we can file. CSR is like, listen, JJ, you just said we can file, can we? So if you are a Schedule C, Schedule F filer, you're self-employed, and if you have no employees, and if you don't plan to reapply for first draw, then you can go ahead and file for forgiveness. No reason to wait. And here's what we want to do. I'm going to share my screen really quick here. I'm getting a little better at this. But we will go to, you can see up at the top left, go to www.sba.gov/PPP, and I'll put a link in the video here for you. But go to that, and it's going to bring up the Paycheck Protection page on the SBA website. That's everything PPP, which is phenomenal, okay? But anyways, you'll see here a little section on the PPP forgiveness, and then it's going to bring up the version, the latest version that you want to follow. And so you're going to do the Form 3508S. I'll also put a link to that, but know this, the best thing to do is always go to sba.gov/PPP, so that when you go in, you're always knowing that you're getting the full kind of like a dive into the information to make sure that you're fully aware of anything that may have been updated. But nonetheless, you're going to do this Form 3508S. S is in self-employed. So you can see here, there's lots of other versions, although they just updated it on the 19th. So when you look at this, when it comes up, pretty simple here. But this is for loans up to $150,000. So for the self-employed, really you aren't able to qualify for more than $20,833 of forgiveness, because the maximum that can be included in your calculation is $100,000. So $100,000 divided by 12 times 2.5 is $20,833. So know this, that when you're completing this, okay, when you're putting down the requested loan forgiveness amount, you don't want to put more than $20,833, because the SBA is going to know that that's not possible unless you have employees, right? So again, this video is for the Schedule C, Schedule F filer, no employees, not going to reapply for first draw in the second round. So with this, just a couple of things to know, pretty basic info up top here. You just go and look at your original application to get this. You'll mark it first draw or second draw. So if you're doing it for the PPP you got in 2020, of course, you're going to mark it first draw. The SBA number and the lender number, typically that'll be on your tax or on your loan documents. You can pull that together. You'll put in what your PPP loan amount was. You'll put the disbursement date, which is pretty much going to be whatever the date of your loan documents are. And then they did make this clear, which is beautiful. In the instructions, they said employees at the time of loan app and employees at the time of forgiveness app. For the self-employed that don't have any employees, you'll put a 1 in each one of those items. The covered period is going to be 168 days, 24 weeks. You don't need to worry about what dates you put down. If you also got PUA, you just want to put down 24 weeks. And the reason you want to put down 24 weeks, covered period being the disbursement date plus 168 days, is it gives you the better calculation to achieve forgiveness. So just know that. If you don't do 24 weeks, you got to use the old method that doesn't lead to automatic calculation of divided by 12 times 2.5. Now, with that being said, amount spent on payroll costs. Okay, so for the self-employed, what's the amount spent on payroll costs? And this is where the banks are going to, sometimes challenge us on this. But for the self-employed, right, it's Schedule C, line 31 divided by 12 times 2.5. Boom, that's your payroll cost. When they call it payroll costs, that's why it's confusing still for everybody. Self-employed can't have payroll to themselves, not possible. Anyways, amount spent on payroll costs. For you, that's what that amount is. Schedule C, line 31 divided by 12 times 2.5, or Schedule F, line 34 divided by 12 times 2.5. Then what's your forgiveness amount? Well, believe it or not, for you, it's the same number. So the amount of what was spent on payroll costs is that calculation I just told you. Well, the requested amount is the same calculation. That's why it's key that you list the covered period as 168 days. Because if you don't list it as 168 days, then technically if somebody were to look at this thing in the minutia or follow up with you, they would potentially have you do the old formula. You don't have to worry about it. And then you're going to sign off on these things, and then guess what? You're done. You're donezo. Boom! Obviously, you'll sign and date and all that good stuff, hand it in. Now, I want you to note this. They've got some great information here in the instructions. So you can go through that. It just walk you back through a few things. When you're talking about cash compensation and employee and owner comp, you really don't need to worry about any of that stuff. On the owner comp here, self-employed, basically, you have a self-employed individual. So there it is, capped at $20,833 because it's no more than $100,000, right? Now, the reason they say 19 and 20 here is because this is available for those that are going to apply for forgiveness for the second draw. So for you, you're only basing this off of the information from 2019 when you're filing for forgiveness for PPP first draw. Let's be clear. That first draw that we're talking about for you, it's January 26th, almost 3 a.m. That is what you would call PPP in 2020, right? It's kind of an easier way to look at that. And then I just wanted you to note something that's huge here. Okay, like it's huge, it's huge, it's huge. It says documents that each borrower must maintain but is not required to submit. So for the PPP that you got in 2020, what you just did there on the first page, donezo. You don't have to provide anything. Now, if the bank wants something, okay, I guess you can give it to them, the Schedule C or whatever. But if the bank starts going, well, wait a second, I need to see payroll documentation, it's like, what? So I'm going to make a note here of what I told you I was going to put in the body of this. And the video I'm going to give you a link to is that it's not possible by law for a self-employed to be an employee of themselves. So those that file Schedule C and Schedule F, you, the self-employed, by law, not possible. So I've got this video where I broke it down and show you how the SBA and the IRS both indicate that as a Schedule C filer, you're not an employee, which means you don't have traditional payroll costs. So I have been baffled that some of the banks have said, well, we want to see the documentation. Well, it's not required. Okay, that's the whole point of this simplification certification. So I would just say this, it's time to go ahead and file. But if your bank's going to hassle you and like, well, no, we're going to need to see that you paid yourself, or, well, no, we're going to need to see payroll records, or no, we want to see that you wrote checks to yourself. That's all false. It's malarkey, baloney. It's crap. It doesn't exist. It's not possible. It's really just mind-boggling to me that banks aren't trying to make it easier on themselves, because that's what this thing is all about. So hopefully that helps. Go ahead and get it in. Now, if you have employees, again, hang on, because we want to make sure that you get your employee retention tax credit. Got a seminar that I'm putting together on that. You can check out that. And then if you're going to reapply, now if you're like, well, wait a second, what do you mean I reapply for first draw? Well, in the second round, which is the money that we're dealing with now in 2021, the SBA, or Congress, the law, but the SBA has second round of money. And if you didn't get the right amount on the first go, which was in 2020, then you can apply for first draw. Okay. Now, obviously, if you never applied for PPP, you're probably not listening to this video, because first draw was also for those that didn't apply last year for whatever reason. Well, they can go now apply. Nonetheless, the only reason you would end up most likely reapplying for PPP first draw is you don't qualify for second draw, meaning you don't have a drop in gross receipts by at least 25%, because that's what's required to apply for second draw. So if you don't qualify for that, and then you're like, well, maybe I want to reapply. Well, the only way you're going to get any more is if the amount you got originally was not correct, as in not enough. How could that happen? Well, for a Schedule C, Schedule F filer, that could be where somebody didn't know they could include their employees, and now they could go and reapply and get that. Or they didn't know they could include their net, or they were using an estimate and the net income from Schedule C was higher, so they could have got more. Now, the farmers get to base their PPP on line 1, the gross receipts. If they have employees, they get to include their employees and then go to line 1 gross receipts minus that wage, and together the Schedule F gets a nice bigger way to get the money. The other thing to note is that if you don't qualify for the second draw because you don't have a drop, you can reapply for first draw, and it is based on 2019 or 20, the higher of. Here's the thing to note. Yeah, you might want to check out your options there real quick. Well, how do you know? Well, take 2019 Schedule C, line 31, divided by 12 times 2.5. Boom, you should already know what that is, because that's everything related to this application that we're going through here. Take that, then go, well, what do I think my 2020 is going to be? Because right now on the 26th of January, I don't probably know that many, maybe like 0.1% of those that are self-employed would have their Schedule C done by now. But what do you think that it's going to be? Okay, so what you think it's going to be, take that divided by 12 times 2.5, go, okay, well, what are we dealing with here, right? And then if it's like, well, gosh, I could get a lot more, then talk with your bank. On the PPP forgiveness, know this, even though I'm like, hey, you can go ahead and file now, you do have 10 months from the end of the covered period to file. So even if you got your money early April, right? Well, the covered period we know is 24 weeks, even for the self-employed. Doesn't mean it needed to last 24 weeks, but it's 24 weeks, even for the self-employed. So let's just say you got your PPP early April, right? So let's go out almost 6 months. So we're going to May to June, July to August, September, October, right? So it'd be early October that you've hit the end of your covered period. And then you get 10 months, right? Which is to November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August. What? So you have all the way till August. So there's not really a rush. And I'll tell you this right now, I haven't yet come across anybody that's told me that their bank's going by this yet. Now, I mean, it just came out a few days ago. So here's what I would say for you. If you don't have employees, you're not going to reapply for first draw, and your bank's not hassling you, then go ahead and apply. And it's that easy to walk through that Form 3508S. Well, hey, you know what? I was going to just put this video together to say, hey, CSR, you can finally file now. And then I went into much more of the details. So I guess let me stop share on this. And all right, hey, thanks for tuning in. I always forget to ask, but I'd love it if you'd subscribe. Subscribers, you probably already do, but turn on your notifications. Look at these red eyes. I think I actually am going to shoot one more video. All right, hey, I appreciate y'all so much. And then don't you ever forget, you've never met a CPA quite like me. I got to get a hang of this thing because when I'm done, the way I'm shooting this video, it's through the Zoom so that I can pull up the screen. But then I always got to look down and I got to hit end, and then I got to hit end meeting for